Keanu Reeves, the world's most adored actor, a man whose kindness radiates like a beacon in the chaos of Hollywood, once stepped into a quiet bookstore for what should have been a simple evening, only to stumble into the most jaw-dropping, outrageous spectacle of his career. Something so wild, so utterly astonishing happened that night that it turned a peaceful book signing into a battlefield of emotions, accusations, and shocking revelations. The air crackled with tension, the world held its breath, and what unfolded was nothing short of the greatest controversy to ever entangle this beloved icon. No one saw it coming, not the fans, not the press, and certainly not Keanu himself. What erupted was beyond imagination, a clash so intense it promised to rewrite everything you thought you knew about him. Buckle up, because this is the story of how one incredible moment spiraled into a saga that shook the world. The evening sun dipped low over Los Angeles, painting the sky in hues of amber and violet as Keanu Reeves arrived at the literary haven, a quaint, independent bookstore tucked away on a bustling street corner. This wasn't just any venue. It was a cherished retreat for book lovers, its weathered brick facade and ivy-draped windows whispering tales of countless stories shared within its walls. Tonight, it was transformed into a shrine of admiration, a place where fans gathered to honor a man whose humility and grace had made him a legend beyond the silver screen. The street outside buzzed with excitement. A throng of devotees stretched around the block, their hands clutching copies of Keanu's latest work, Reflections of a Wanderer, a poignant blend of poetry and photography that had already sparked whispers of literary genius. Some had camped out since dawn, their faces alight with anticipation, their chatter a symphony of adoration for the man who had starred in their favorite films and touched their hearts with his quiet generosity. Posters of Keanu's iconic roles, Neo, John Wick, Johnny Silverhand, adorned the bookstore's exterior, fluttering gently in the evening breeze, while a banner overhead proudly proclaimed, "An evening with Keanu Reeves." This isn't just a story, it's a revelation. And if you want to see how far it goes, subscribe now before it disappears. Keanu emerged from his modest black sedan, a vehicle so unassuming it seemed almost comical for a star of his stature. The crowd erupted into cheers, a wave of sound that rolled over him like a tide. He raised a hand in acknowledgement, his trademark half-smile softening his rugged features, and the fans roared louder, their phones flashing as they captured the moment. Dressed in a weathered leather jacket, faded jeans, and scuffed boots, he looked more like a wandering poet than a Hollywood titan, his presence radiating a calm that belied the storm about to unfold. Inside, the bookstore was a sanctuary of warmth and nostalgia. Towering shelves groaned under the weight of countless volumes, their spines a patchwork of colors and textures that stretched toward the exposed wooden beams of the ceiling. The air carried the rich scent of aged paper, mingling with the faint aroma of freshly brewed coffee wafting from a small counter in the corner. The staff had outdone themselves, arranging a simple wooden table at the center of the room, flanked by a towering stack of Keanu's books and a single chair that awaited its occupant. Soft lighting bathed the space in a golden glow, casting long shadows that danced across the hardwood floor. Keanu settled into his seat, his movements deliberate and unhurried. The line of fans began to move, each person stepping forward with a mix of reverence and excitement. A young woman with teary eyes presented her book, her hands trembling as she approached. An older man with a weathered face offered a nod of respect, his copy worn from repeated readings. A teenager in a Matrix-inspired trench coat beamed with uncontainable joy. Keanu met each one with the same steady gaze, his dark eyes reflecting a quiet intensity as he listened to their stories, tales of inspiration drawn from his films, gratitude for his acts of kindness, and admiration for the vulnerability laid bare in his writing. He signed each book with a flourish, his pen gliding across the pages, leaving behind a tangible piece of himself for those who adored him. The rhythm of the evening was soothing, almost meditative. The murmur of the crowd outside faded into a distant hum, and the bookstore became a cocoon of connection between Keanu and his fans. The staff hovered nearby, their smiles proud as they watched the event unfold flawlessly, their careful preparations paying off in the seamless flow of the night. For a fleeting moment, it seemed as though nothing could disrupt this perfect harmony. But perfection is fragile, and beneath the surface, a shadow stirred. Among the sea of admirers stood a figure who didn't quite belong. A young woman, no more than 30, lingered near the back of the line, her presence a stark contrast to the warmth around her. Her dark hair was pulled into a tight, messy bun, strands escaping like tendrils of unrest. She wore a faded green jacket, its sleeves rolled up to reveal wrists adorned with bracelets etched with activist slogans. In her hands, she clutched a tattered notebook, its edges frayed from constant use, her fingers gripping it so tightly her knuckles whitened. Her eyes, sharp, unyielding, and burning with a fervor that bordered on obsession, never wavered from Keanu. She shifted her weight from one foot to the other, her movements restless, as if her body could barely contain the energy simmering within. As she inched closer to the table, the atmosphere in the room began to shift. The air grew heavier, the soft chatter of the crowd dimming as though muffled by an unseen force. A few fans cast curious glances her way, sensing something amiss in her rigid posture and the way her gaze pierced through the space between her and Keanu. The staff, too, noticed her, their smiles faltering slightly as they exchanged subtle looks of concern. Yet no one moved to intervene. Not yet. After all, this was Keanu's event, a celebration of unity and goodwill. Surely, nothing could truly go wrong. At last, her moment arrived. She stepped forward, her boots thudding against the hardwood floor with a force that seemed to reverberate through the room. She reached the table and slammed her notebook down in front of Keanu, the sound sharp and jarring, cutting through the tranquility like a blade. Keanu looked up, his expression open and welcoming, his hand pausing mid-signature as he met her gaze. For a heartbeat, the world held its breath. Then she erupted. Her voice, described later by those present as a piercing shriek that could shatter glass, filled the bookstore with accusations that stunned everyone within earshot. She pointed a trembling finger at Keanu, her face twisting into a mask of righteous fury, her eyes blazing with a zealot's conviction. She claimed he was a hypocrite, a fraud masquerading as a saint while secretly funding industries that tortured and exploited animals. She cited his investments, his endorsements, even his personal choices, weaving a narrative of betrayal that painted him as a villain cloaked in virtue. Her words poured forth like a tidal wave, each one more venomous than the last, her voice rising until it seemed to shake the very walls. The room froze. Fans stood rooted to the spot, their mouths agape, their books clutched tightly as they processed the sudden assault on their hero. The staff hesitated, their hands hovering uncertainly, unsure whether to act or wait. Keanu's smile vanished, replaced by a flicker of confusion that deepened into something more complex, concern, perhaps, or the dawning realization that this was no ordinary disruption. He leaned forward slightly, his posture still calm but his eyes narrowing as he studied the woman before him. She showed no signs of stopping. Her tirade grew wilder, her accusations spiraling into personal attacks that cut deeper with every syllable. She gestured wildly, her notebook sliding off the table and hitting the floor with a dull thud, pages splaying open to reveal scribbled notes and furious underlines. The crowd began to stir, murmurs of disbelief and anger rippling through them, but no one dared interrupt, not yet. Security personnel stationed near the entrance finally moved forward, their expressions tense as they closed in on the woman. But Keanu raised a hand, a silent command that halted them in their tracks. He stood, his tall frame unfolding with a quiet authority that silenced the room once more. He faced the activist, his presence a steady anchor amidst the chaos she had unleashed. His eyes locked onto hers, conveying a mixture of empathy and resolve, as if he sought to understand the source of her rage even as he prepared to confront it. He reached for a pen and a scrap of paper from the table, his movements deliberate as he scribbled something quickly. He extended the note toward her, an offering of peace in the midst of her storm. She snatched it from his hand, her fingers trembling as she scanned the words. For a fleeting moment, her fury seemed to waver, her shoulders slumping as if the weight of his response had pierced her armor. But then her face hardened once more. She crumpled the paper into a tight ball and hurled it to the ground, her eyes flashing with renewed defiance. The tension snapped. Security surged forward again, this time undeterred by Keanu's gesture. They flanked the woman, their hands gentle but firm as they guided her toward the exit. She resisted, her body twisting as she continued to shout, her voice echoing through the bookstore even as she was ushered out. Her words lingered in the air, a haunting refrain that refused to fade, leaving behind a trail of unease that settled over the room like a shroud. Keanu remained standing, his gaze fixed on the doorway where she had disappeared. His expression was unreadable, a mask of contemplation that hid the storm brewing within. The fans, still reeling, began to whisper among themselves, their voices a jumble of shock and confusion. The staff scrambled to restore order, their hands shaking as they urged the line to continue, but the magic of the evening had been shattered. The bookstore, once a haven of peace, now thrummed with an electric undercurrent of uncertainty. Keanu lowered himself back into his chair, his movements slow and measured, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of something deeper, a spark of determination, perhaps, or the first ember of a fire that would soon blaze out of control. No one could have known it then, but this moment, this single, explosive clash, was merely the opening act of a drama that would grip the world and reveal a side of Keanu Reeves no one had ever seen. The night air was crisp, carrying the faint hum of traffic from the streets beyond the bookstore. Maya Torres leaned against a lamppost, her breath visible in the faint glow of the streetlight. She glanced at her phone, the video of the activist's meltdown still paused on the screen, Keanu's calm silhouette framed against the chaos. Her finger hovered over the upload button once more, temptation tugging at her instincts. A single tap could send the footage racing across the internet, racking up views and thrusting her byline into the spotlight. But she resisted. This wasn't just a viral clip, it was a story, and she wanted to tell it right. The bookstore door creaked open and Maya straightened, tucking her phone into her jacket pocket. Keanu Reeves stepped out, his leather jacket zipped against the chill, hands buried deep in his pockets. The crowd had dispersed, leaving the sidewalk quiet save for a few lingering fans who hovered at a respectful distance, snapping photos. He gave them a small wave, his signature half-smile softening the gesture, before turning his attention to Maya. "Thanks for waiting," he said, his voice low and gravelly, carrying that familiar warmth that had endeared him to millions. Up close, she noticed the faint lines etched around his eyes, the subtle weariness that lingered beneath his calm exterior. This wasn't the untouchable icon of the silver screen. This was a man wrestling with something real. "Of course," Maya replied, adjusting her stance to match his relaxed demeanor. She pulled a small notepad from her bag, flipping it open to a blank page. "I won't take much of your time, Mr. Reeves. I just want to understand what happened in there, from your perspective." Keanu nodded, his gaze drifting toward the darkened windows of the bookstore. For a moment he seemed lost in thought, the weight of the evening settling over him like a shadow. "Call me Keanu," he said finally, his eyes returning to hers. "And it's complicated." Maya scribbled Keanu at the top of her page, her pen moving quickly. "Complicated how?" He exhaled, a faint cloud of breath escaping into the night. "That woman, the activist, she wasn't just angry, she was hurting. I could see it in her eyes. I don't know her story, but I've seen that kind of pain before." He paused, his expression tightening. "I wanted to reach her, to hear her out, but she didn't want to hear me." Maya tilted her head, her journalist's instincts kicking in. "You wrote her a note. What did it say?" Keanu reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the crumpled paper, unfolding it with care. He held it out to her, letting her read the words scrawled in his handwriting. "Let's talk. I'm listening." "It's what I do," he said simply, folding the note back into his pocket. "Or what I try to do. People deserve to be heard even when they're screaming." Maya jotted down the phrase, her mind racing. This was Keanu Reeves, unfiltered, thoughtful, introspective, and disarmingly sincere. It was the kind of quote that could anchor a feature piece, but it also raised more questions. "She didn't take it," she pointed out. "She threw it back at you. Why do you think she rejected that offer?" Keanu shrugged, a faint flicker of frustration crossing his face. "Maybe she didn't trust me. Maybe she thought it was a PR move. Or maybe she's just too far gone in her own fight to see anything else. I don't know, but I meant it." The honesty in his voice struck her. This wasn't a rehearsed soundbite, it was raw, unguarded. Maya shifted gears, sensing an opportunity to dig deeper. "You spoke to the crowd after she left. You said you're willing to have the tough conversations. Does that mean you're planning to address this publicly, to respond to her accusations?" Keanu's jaw tightened, and for the first time, Maya saw a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. "I don't know yet," he admitted. "I don't want this to turn into a circus, some tabloid headline that twists everything out of context. But I also don't want to pretend it didn't happen. People saw it. They felt it. And I owe them something real." Maya nodded, her pen flying across the page. "So what's your next move?" He looked at her, his gaze steady but searching. "I need to figure out what she was really after. Why she came here, why she chose me. This wasn't random, she had a purpose. And if I'm going to respond, I need to understand it." Maya paused, her pen hovering mid-sentence. "You're going to track her down?" "Maybe," Keanu said, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Or maybe I'll just listen harder next time." Before Maya could press further, a sharp ping cut through the silence. She glanced at her phone, her stomach dropping as a notification flashed across the screen. Breaking. Keanu Reeves confronted by vegan activist at book signing. Video goes viral. Someone else had beaten her to the punch. The footage was out there, spreading like wildfire. Keanu noticed her expression and tilted his head. "What is it?" Maya hesitated, then turned the screen toward him. The video, grainy but unmistakable, showed the activist's outburst in full, her voice shrill and accusing, followed by Keanu's quiet stand and his words to the crowd. The comments were already flooding in, a mix of praise for his composure and outrage at the activist's audacity. The internet was doing what it did best, amplifying, distorting, and dividing. Keanu watched the clip in silence, his face unreadable. When it ended, he handed the phone back to her. "Guess the storm here," he said quietly. Maya swallowed, guilt prickling at her. "I didn't upload this, I swear." "I know," he said, his tone reassuring. "But someone did, and now it's out of our hands." She studied him, searching for anger or resignation, but found neither. Instead, there was a quiet determination in his eyes, a resolve that hadn't been there before. "What are you going to do?" she asked. Keanu took a step back, glancing up at the night sky as if searching for an answer among the stars. "I'm going to keep going," he said finally. "This doesn't end here, not for me and not for her." With that, he gave her a nod, a silent acknowledgement that their conversation was over for now, and turned to walk away, his figure blending into the shadows of the street. Maya watched him go, her notepad clutched tightly in her hand. She had her story, or at least the start of it. But as the viral video continued to buzz on her phone, she knew this was only the tip of the iceberg. The activist's outburst had lit a match, and Keanu's response had fanned the flames. Now, with the world watching, the firestorm was just beginning. The cafe was steeped in a fragile silence as Elena Vega and Keanu Reeves sat across from each other, the weight of their words hanging in the air. Outside, the night pressed against the windows, the faint hum of traffic a distant reminder of the world beyond this small, dimly lit space. Maya Torres, parked discreetly across the street, adjusted her camera lens, her heart pounding with the anticipation of what might unfold. Inside, Alina leaned back in the booth, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. Her eyes, sharp and unyielding, studied Keanu with a mixture of skepticism and curiosity. "You say you want to fight together," she said, her voice low but firm. "But words are cheap. I've heard promises before politicians, CEOs, celebrities like you. They all say the right things until the cameras turn off." Keanu nodded, his expression steady. "I get that. You've been burned before. I'm not here to make empty promises. I'm here because I didn't know about EcoTech, about what they were really doing. And now that I do, I can't just walk away." Alina's lips pressed into a thin line. "You didn't know because you didn't want to know. People like you hand over your money to advisors and wash your hands of it. Ignorance isn't an excuse, it's a privilege." Her words stung, and Keanu felt them settle deep in his chest. She wasn't wrong. He trusted others to manage his investments, assuming they'd align with his values. That trust had been a luxury, one that had implicated him in something he'd never intended. "You're right," he admitted, his voice quiet but resolute. "I should have been more careful, but I'm not here to defend what I've done or didn't do. I'm here to figure out what comes next." Alina's gaze softened slightly, though her guard remained firmly in place. "What comes next is accountability. EcoTech's been poisoning rivers, clearing forests, displacing communities, all while hiding behind their green energy PR. Divesting might hurt their stock, but it doesn't undo the damage. It doesn't stop them." Keanu leaned forward, his hands clasped on the table. "So tell me what will. You've been fighting this fight longer than I have. You know what they're afraid of, what'll hit them where it hurts." For the first time, a flicker of surprise crossed Alina's face. She hadn't expected this, not just the willingness to listen, but the genuine hunger for direction. She uncrossed her arms, resting her hands on the table as she considered his words. "Exposure," she said finally. "They thrive in the shadows. Documents, whistleblowers, hard evidence. That's what they can't bury. I've been trying to get it for months, but I don't have the resources. They've got lawyers, money, connections. I've got a laptop and a few volunteers." Keanu's mind raced. Resources. That was something he could offer, something tangible, immediate. "I've got money," he said, "and connections, lawyers of my own. If you've got leads, I can get you what you need to finish what you started." Alina hesitated, her instinct to distrust warring with the possibility he was presenting. "And what's in it for you? Redemption. A clean slate." Keanu shook his head. "This isn't about me. Not anymore. It's about doing what's right. If I've been part of the problem, even unknowingly, then I want to be part of the solution." The sincerity in his voice was unmistakable, and Alina felt something shift, a crack in the wall she'd built against him. She pulled a worn notebook from her bag and slid it across the table. "These are my notes. Contacts, leads, fragments of what I've pieced together. It's not enough on its own, but with the right push." Keanu opened the notebook, scanning the pages filled with tight, hurried handwriting, names, dates, locations, all circling EcoTech's operations. "This is a start," he said, looking up at her. "I'll get my people on it, discreetly. No press, no fanfare, just results." Alina nodded slowly, a cautious alliance forming between them. "If you're serious about this, we do it my way. No cutting corners, no compromises. EcoTech doesn't get a pass just because you're involved." "Agreed," Keanu said, extending a hand across the table. Alina stared at it for a moment, then reached out and shook it. Her grip was firm, a silent acknowledgement that this was no longer just her fight or his, but theirs. Outside, Maya lowered her camera, her breath fogging the car window. She caught the handshake through the glass, a grainy but powerful image that spoke volumes. This wasn't the explosive confrontation she'd half expected, but something quieter, more profound, a turning point. She scribbled a note to herself, "Keanu and Alina, enemies to allies." Her phone buzzed with a text from her editor. "EcoTech's stock is crashing. Investors are panicking. What's your next move?" Maya glanced back at the cafe, where Keanu and Alina were now bent over the notebook, their heads close as they spoke in low tones. She typed a quick reply, "I've got something bigger, exclusive coming soon." She knew she couldn't publish yet, not until Keanu gave her the go-ahead. He trusted her to be here, to witness this without turning it into a circus. But when the time came, this story would be seismic. The meeting stretched into the early hours, the cafe's lone barista casting curious glances at the pair in the corner. Keanu and Alina mapped out a plan. He'd fund a team to chase down her leads, private investigators, forensic accountants, anyone who could unearth the evidence she needed. She'd guide them, keeping the operation focused on EcoTech's weakest points. It was a gamble, one that could backfire if the company caught wind of it too soon, but they both knew the stakes were too high to play it safe. As they stepped out into the cool night air, Alina paused, turning to Keanu. "Why me?" she asked suddenly. "You could have ignored this, let it fade away. Why take the risk?" Keanu looked at her, his eyes reflecting the streetlights. "Because you were right to call me out. I've spent too long coasting, letting other people steer the ship. It's time I took the wheel." Alina gave a small, reluctant smile, the first he'd seen from her. "Don't screw this up, Reeves." "I won't," he promised, and for the first time in days he felt a spark of hope. Maya watched them part ways, Alina disappearing down a side street, Keanu climbing into his car. She waited until he'd pulled away before starting her own engine, her mind already racing with how she'd frame this story when the time came. The viral video had been the spark, but this quiet, determined partnership could be the fire that changed everything. As she drove home, the city lights blurring past, she couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just witnessed the beginning of something unstoppable. Keanu and Alina were an unlikely duo, bound by conflict but united by purpose. And whatever came next, Maya would be there to tell it. The rain hammered down relentlessly, soaking Keanu, Alina, and Maya as they huddled beneath the awning of an abandoned storefront, their breaths fogging in the chilly night air. The adrenaline from their narrow escape still coursed through them, sharpening their senses. Maya clutched her bag tightly, the camera inside holding the raw, unfiltered truth of EcoTech's intentions, proof that the company wasn't just corrupt, but willing to resort to intimidation, discreditation, and possibly worse. Keanu wiped water from his face, his dark hair plastered to his forehead. "We can't stay here long. They'll be looking for us." Alina nodded, her sharp eyes scanning the empty street. "That guard saw us. It won't take them long to figure out who we are, if they don't already know." Maya's voice trembled slightly, though she fought to keep it steady. "We've got their voices on tape. Victoria Lang talking about neutralizing us, dealing with the whistleblower. It's enough to go to the police, the FBI, anyone who will listen." Keanu's gaze hardened, his mind racing. "We need to get this to my legal team first. They'll know how to package it, make it ironclad before EcoTech can spin it or bury it. Marcus said they're ready to file injunctions. We just need to hand this over." "You felt that, didn't you? That was no ordinary moment. If it hit you, hit like and let's keep going." Alina crossed her arms, her jacket dripping onto the pavement. "And then what? We sit back and hope the system works. EcoTech's got lawyers, money, connections. They'll fight dirty." "They're already fighting dirty," Keanu shot back, his tone firm but not harsh. "That's why we don't stop. We hit them from every angle, legal, public, whatever it takes." A flicker of approval passed through Alina's eyes. She pegged Keanu as a celebrity playing at activism, but his resolve was proving her wrong. "All right, legal first then, but we need a safe place to regroup. My apartment's compromised, they've got my name on that list. Yours too, Keanu." Maya spoke up, her voice steadier now. "My place, it's small, off the radar. They don't know me yet, not like they know you too. We can hole up there, get the files off the camera and send them to your lawyers." Keanu nodded. "Let's move." The trio slipped through the rain-slicked streets, keeping to the shadows as thunder rumbled overhead. Maya's apartment was a modest walk-up in a quieter part of the city. Its peeling paint and flickering hallway lights a stark contrast to Keanu's polished world. Inside, the space was cluttered but cozy, bookshelves overflowing, a desk buried under notebooks and camera gear. Maya locked the door behind them, sliding a chain into place for good measure. Alina shook off her wet jacket, packing the small living room like a caged animal. We're on borrowed time. If they've dealt with the whistleblower, they're tying up loose ends fast. Keanu set Maya's bag on the desk, carefully retrieving the camera. Then we don't waste a second. Let's get this uploaded. Maya plugged the camera into her laptop, her fingers flying across the keys as the files transferred. The grainy footage flickered to life on the screen, Victoria Lang's icy voice filling the room, her words chilling even in replay. We need to neutralize the threat before they go public. The insider has been dealt with. If that doesn't work, we'll take more direct measures. Keanu's stomach twisted. They're not bluffing. Dealt with, that could mean anything. We need to find out who that whistleblower was. Alina stopped packing, leaning over Maya's shoulder to watch the footage. My contacts said it might be a high-level exec, someone with access to this kind of intel. If they're dead, or worse, it's a warning to us. Maya paused the video, her brow furrowing. There's more here. Audio files, documents, they're still transferring. This isn't just from tonight. The whistleblower must have loaded everything onto that USB drive. The laptop pinged as the transfer completed. Maya opened the additional files, revealing a treasure trove of evidence. Emails authorizing illegal waste dumping, recordings of bribes to foreign officials, and a memo detailing a contingency plan labeled Operation Clean Sweep. A strategy to silence dissenters through defamation, legal harassment, or elimination if necessary. Keanu's voice was low, almost a growl. This isn't just about protecting their profits, it's a war machine. Alina's hands clenched into fists. And we're the targets. Look, there's a timeline in here. They're accelerating clean sweep. They want it done before the end of the week. Maya scrolled further, her eyes widening. There's a name, Richard Hensley, Chief Operating Officer. He's mentioned in half these emails. Could he be the whistleblower? Alina frowned, pulling out her phone to type a quick message to her contacts. Hensley, I've heard that name. Big player at EcoTech. If he turned on them, it'd explain the panic in that meeting. Keanu leaned closer to the screen. We need to know if he's alive. If he's not, we're next. While Maya encrypted the files and sent them to Keanu's legal team via a secure server, Alina's phone buzzed with a response from her network. Hensley's MIA. Last seen leaving EcoTech HQ 2 days ago. Word is, he was acting paranoid. Might have known they were onto him. Alina read the message aloud, her voice tight. Missing isn't dead, but it's not good. Keanu rubbed his jaw, the weight of the situation settling deeper. If he's gone, this evidence is all we've got. We can't let it slip through our fingers. Maya hit send on the upload, exhaling sharply. It's with your lawyers now. They'll have it by morning. What do we do until then? Survive, Alina said bluntly. We stay off the grid. No phones, no credit cards, they'll be tracking us. Keanu nodded, his mind shifting into a mode he hadn't used since his action movie days, calm, calculated, ready for the fight. We'll lay low here tonight. Tomorrow we push forward. Marcus will get the feds involved and we'll figure out our next move. Across the city, in EcoTech's gleaming headquarters, Victoria Lang stood before a wall of monitors, her expression a mask of controlled fury. The security footage from the service hallway played on a loop, 3 figures fleeing into the night. She recognized Keanu's distinctive silhouette instantly. They were here, she said, her voice cutting through the tense silence of the room. They heard everything. The silver-haired executive from the meeting shifted uncomfortably. We've got teams sweeping the area. They won't get far. Victoria turned, her eyes like daggers. They don't need to. They've got evidence, Hensley's leak, and now this. We need to move faster. Double the PR campaign. Paint Reeves as a washed-up star chasing conspiracies, the activist as a terrorist. And find them. I want every resource we have on this. A junior aide hesitated before speaking. "What about Hensley, if he's still out there?" "He's not," Victoria snapped. "He's been handled. Focus on the living threats." The aide nodded, though doubt lingered in his eyes. Victoria didn't notice. She was already dialing a private number, her voice low as she spoke. "It's time to escalate. Do what you have to." Back at Maya's apartment, the trio sat in a tense quiet, the rain drumming against the windows. Keanu glanced at Alina and Maya, their faces etched with exhaustion and determination. They were in deeper than any of them had planned, but there was no turning back now. "We've got the truth," he said softly, breaking the silence. "That's our strength. Whatever they throw at us, we hold on to that." Alina met his gaze, a rare softness in her expression. "You're not what I expected, Reeves." He gave a faint smile. "Good, let's keep surprising them." Maya managed a small laugh, though her hands still trembled. "We're a team now, right?" "Damn right," Alina said, her tone fierce. As the storm raged outside, the firestorm within was just beginning to blaze. The night stretched on, fraught with uncertainty, but Keanu, Alina, and Maya stood united, ready to face the dawn and whatever EcoTech had in store. The apartment was swallowed by darkness, the sudden loss of power amplifying every sound, the creak of the floorboards, the distant hum of the city, and now, the deliberate footsteps approaching from the hallway. The sharp knock on the door reverberated through the small space, a sound that carried the weight of inevitability. Keanu, Alina, Maya, and Richard Hensley froze, their breaths shallow, their eyes darting toward the only exit. Keanu's voice cut through the silence, low and steady despite the adrenaline surging through him. "They're here. We need to move now." Alina was already on her feet, her instincts kicking in. She grabbed her bag, slinging it over her shoulder, and motioned toward the window. "Fire escape. It's our only shot." Maya hesitated, her gaze flicking to her laptop and camera on the table, the evidence that could bring EcoTech down. "The files." "No time," Keanu said, pulling her toward the window. "We've got Hensley and what's on your camera. That's enough for now." Hensley, still pale and trembling from their earlier escape, nodded weakly. "They'll kill us if they catch us. Please, let's go." The knocking turned into a pounding, the door rattling in its frame. A muffled voice called out, cold and authoritative. "Open the door, Ms. Torres. We know you're in there. Make this easy on yourself." Alina yanked the window open, the cool night air rushing in as she climbed onto the fire escape. Keanu helped Hensley through next, the whistleblower's shaky hands fumbling for the rungs. Maya followed, her camera bag clutched tightly to her chest. Keanu took one last look at the door, now splintering under the force of the intruders, and slipped out, pulling the window shut behind him. The metal fire escape groaned under their weight as they descended, their footsteps clanging in the quiet night. Below, the alley was shadowed and narrow, offering little cover. Alina reached the bottom first, scanning the area. "Clear for now. We head for the car." They hit the ground running, darting through the alley toward the street where Keanu had parked the borrowed sedan. But as they rounded the corner, headlights flared to life, blinding them. Two black SUVs screeched to a stop, blocking their path. Dark-suited figures spilled out, weapons glinting in the harsh light. "Back!" Keanu shouted, shoving the group behind a dumpster as the first shots rang out. Bullets ricocheted off the brick wall, sending sparks flying. Maya yelped, ducking low, while Hensley cowered, his hands over his head. Alina peeked around the edge, her face grim. "They've got us pinned. We can't make it to the car." Keanu's mind raced, his years of training for action roles unexpectedly useful. He spotted a narrow gap between the buildings, a service passage, barely wide enough for a person. "There," he said, pointing. "It's tight, but it might get us out." Alina nodded, trusting his call. "I'll cover you, go." She pulled a small canister from her bag, a smoke grenade, one of her activist tools, and yanked the pin, tossing it toward the operatives. Thick gray smoke billowed into the alley, obscuring their view. Coughs and shouts erupted from the haze as Keanu led the charge, squeezing into the passage with Maya and Hensley close behind. The walls scraped against their shoulders, the air damp and claustrophobic. Behind them, Alina fired off a few warning shots from a concealed pistol, another surprise from her activist arsenal, before ducking into the gap herself. The operatives' footsteps pounded closer, their voices distorted by the smoke and distance. The passage spit them out into a neighboring street, where the city's late-night pulse offered a fleeting chance to blend in. Keanu spotted a delivery truck idling nearby, its driver unloading crates into a storefront. "There," he said, pulling the group toward it. "Hide in the back." They scrambled into the truck's cargo area, crouching behind stacks of boxes as the driver returned, oblivious to his new passengers. The engine rumbled to life, and the truck lurched forward, carrying them away from the chaos. For a moment, there was only the sound of their ragged breathing and the hum of the road beneath them. Maya clutched her camera bag, her hands trembling. That was too close. They knew exactly where we were. Alina's face was taut with fury. "They've been watching us, probably tapped our phones, tracked our movements. We've been sloppy." Hensley shook his head, his voice barely audible. "It's worse than that. They've got surveillance everywhere, cameras, drones, informants. I saw the plans. They don't just react, they anticipate." Keanu's jaw clenched. "Then we stop playing defense, we take the fight to them." Maya looked at him wide-eyed. "How? They've got resources we can't match, money, manpower, tech." "We've got something they don't," Keanu said, his voice resolute. "The truth, and people who'll listen if we can get it out there." Alina leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. "You're talking about going public, leaking everything now." Keanu nodded. "We can't wait for the legal team anymore. They'll stall us, bury us in red tape while EcoTech picks us off. We send the evidence to every media outlet we can trust, put it online, make it viral. They can't silence the whole world." Hensley shifted uncomfortably. "If you do that, there's no going back. They'll come for us harder than ever." "They're already here," Alina snapped. "We're out of options." The truck slowed, pulling into a loading dock a few miles from Maya's apartment. They slipped out as the driver began unloading again, disappearing into the shadows of the industrial district. Maya pulled out her phone, switching it to a burner SIM she'd kept for emergencies. "I've got contacts at 3 major outlets. If I send them the audio and Hensley's files, they'll run it, assuming we can prove it's legit." Keanu glanced at Hensley. "You're the proof. You go on record, tell your story. That's what ties it all together." Hensley swallowed hard but nodded. "Okay, I'll do it." They found a quiet corner near an abandoned factory, where Maya set up her camera. The dim streetlights cast harsh shadows across Hensley's face as he spoke, his voice shaky but determined. He recounted his years at EcoTech, the orders to falsify reports, the experiments on vulnerable communities, names, dates, locations. Maya recorded every word, her hands steady despite the fear gnawing at her. When he finished, she uploaded the video and the evidence files to a secure cloud server, sending links to her contacts with a brief message. "This is the truth. Run it now, or they'll bury it and us." Minutes later, her phone buzzed with a response from one editor. "Holy shit. We're verifying, but if this checks out, it's going live in an hour." Keanu exhaled, a flicker of hope breaking through the exhaustion. "It's done. Now we wait." Alina shook her head, her expression grim. "No, now we run. Once this hits, EcoTech will burn everything to stop us." As if to prove her point, the distant wail of sirens pierced the night, growing louder by the second. Headlights swept across the street, and a black helicopter roared overhead, its spotlight cutting through the darkness. "They found us," Maya whispered, her voice trembling. Keanu grabbed her arm, pulling her toward an alley. "Not yet, they haven't. Move." The group sprinted into the shadows, the sound of pursuit closing in. The evidence was out, the truth unleashed, but the storm was far from over. The warehouse stood as a decaying relic, its cavernous interior swallowed by shadows and the faint hum of distant machinery long silenced. Keanu, Alina, Maya, and Richard Hensley navigated its depths, their movements deliberate, their breaths shallow against the oppressive stillness. Dust hung in the air, stirred by their passage, while the distant rumble of thunder signaled the storm outside nearing its end. EcoTech's operatives were closing in, a relentless force driven by the corporation's unraveling empire, and the weight of that threat pressed against every step the group took. Keanu led them forward, his silhouette cutting through the dim light spilling from shattered skylights. Once a man content to observe, he now carried the mantle of leadership, his resolve hardened by the stakes they faced. Alina trailed just behind, her activist's fire tempered into a quiet strength, her trust in Keanu a steady undercurrent beneath her vigilance. Maya gripped her camera, its lens her weapon, her once detached curiosity replaced by a fierce determination to see this through. Hensley, still shaken, clung to a fragile courage, his betrayal of EcoTech now his only path to redemption. They reached the warehouse's core, a vast chamber where rusted beams loomed overhead, skeletal and unyielding. Moonlight fractured across the concrete floor, painting jagged patterns that danced with every gust of wind. Here, the final stand would unfold, the air thick with the promise of confrontation. A sharp clatter broke the silence, followed by the heavy tread of boots echoing from the darkness. The operatives emerged, their forms materializing like specters, 6 figures clad in black, weapons glinting in the half-light. Keanu gestured swiftly, guiding the group behind a cluster of overturned crates, his pulse racing as he assessed their odds. The enemy moved with precision, fanning out to encircle their prey, their intent clear in the cold efficiency of their advance. Lena's fingers brushed Keanu's wrist, a fleeting anchor in the chaos. Her years of defiance had prepared her for this, though the personal stakes now sharpened her focus to a razor's edge. Beside her, Maya adjusted her camera, her hands steady despite the fear flickering in her chest. She understood the power of this moment. Capturing it could shift the balance, exposing EcoTech's desperation to the world. Hensley huddled low, his breathing uneven, his mind wrestling with the guilt and hope warring within him. The operatives drew closer, their leader, a scarred man with a predator's gaze, halting at the chamber's center. His voice sliced through the tension, low and commanding. "Reeves, we know you're here. Step out and this ends quietly." Keanu's jaw clenched, his mind spinning through possibilities. They were outnumbered, outmatched in firepower, but not in will. He had faced countless battles in fiction, and now in this raw reality he drew on that instinct, seeing the warehouse not as a trap but as a weapon. His eyes flicked to the catwalks overhead, the dangling chains, the precarious stacks of machinery, a battlefield ripe for disruption. With a subtle nod to Alina, he signaled a plan. She understood instantly, her gaze tracing the same vulnerabilities he had spotted. She and Maya slipped leftward, ascending a creaking staircase to the upper levels, their movements silent against the growing clamor below. Keanu remained with Hensley, stepping into the open, his hands raised in a calculated surrender that masked his intent. The scarred man's eyes narrowed, suspicion etching his features. "Where's the rest of your crew?" Keanu met his stare, his voice calm, deliberate. "Gone. It's just us now. You want Hensley, take him." The lie hung in the air, a baited hook. The operatives shifted, their focus tightening on Keanu, when a sudden groan of metal erupted from above. A chain plummeted from the catwalk, crashing into one of the men and sending him sprawling. Alina, perched high, released another, this one toppling a tower of crates that thundered down, scattering the operatives in a storm of debris and confusion. The warehouse erupted into chaos. Keanu grabbed Hensley, pulling him into the shadows as the operatives scrambled to regroup. Maya's camera rolled, her lens capturing the disarray, their shouts, their faltering control. Above, Alina moved like a phantom, her every action precise, her resolve unyielding. The scarred man recovered swiftly, his eyes locking onto Keanu's retreating form. He raised his weapon, finger curling around the trigger, but Elena was faster. She leaped from the catwalk, landing with a force that reverberated through the floor, a length of pipe in her hands. She swung, striking his arm, the gun skidding away as he snarled in pain. He countered with a knife, its blade flashing in the moonlight, and their struggle became a furious clash, her agility against his brute strength, her defiance against his rage. Keanu turned back, his heart lurching at the sight. He couldn't leave her to fight alone, but before he could reach her, another operative loomed, a towering figure whose fists descended like hammers. Keanu ducked, his body reacting with the muscle memory of years spent mastering combat. He twisted, redirecting the man's force, sending him crashing into a heap of twisted metal. High above, Maya filmed, her breath catching as she spotted a hidden threat, a sixth operative, rifle in hand, aiming at Keanu from across the chamber. Instinct overtook her. She seized a loose brick and hurled it, the projectile striking the man's shoulder. His shot veered wide, embedding in the wall beside Keanu's head. The operative whirled toward her, his fury palpable but Hensley, summoned by a courage he hadn't known he possessed, charged, tackling him to the ground. Their struggle was clumsy, desperate, until Keanu intervened, disarming the man with a final, decisive strike. Silence descended, heavy and absolute. The operatives lay defeated, scattered amidst the wreckage of their own ambush. Elena stood over the scarred man, his knife abandoned, his defiance broken. She met Keanu's gaze, her chest rising and falling, a shared understanding passing between them. They had survived together. The first light of dawn crept over the horizon, piercing the storm's remnants as the group emerged from the warehouse. Their faces bore the marks of exhaustion, of wounds both seen and unseen, yet a quiet hope flickered in their eyes. The evidence, Hensley's testimony, Maya's footage, the documents they'd risked everything to secure, had been sent into the world, a beacon that could not be extinguished. The fallout was swift, seismic. EcoTech crumbled under the weight of its exposed sins, its executives hauled away in disgrace. If you enjoyed this story, there's another video on screen right now. Go ahead and give it a look for an even more astonishing tale. And don't forget, we'll have many more uplifting and dramatic stories coming your way. So make sure you subscribe to our channel, that way you'll never miss our newest uploads.